Well, Governor Cuomo and Bill DeBlasio have finally agreed on something, and it took topless women in Times Square to bring them together. We will explain. Then our conversation with famed D.C. attorney Ken Feinberg, the guy who handled the 9/11 compensation fund, Boston Marathon bombing, and a whole lot more, explains how difficult it is to put a price on a human life. And Donald Trump, he showed up for jury duty, but he was one and done, or released the same day. We're going to ask our panel of attorneys if he got special treatment just because he's the Donald, and how attorneys populate the jury box. Now we're going to get to all that, plus big news in Deflategate, that coming up this hour. Good evening. Welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. We first start with an interesting story coming out of where else but Times Square. Both Mayor de Blasio and Governor Cuomo, they want to clamp down on these topless women who parade around asking tourists for money. It's impossible to copy without having some innuendo. These women typically wear just body paint and bikini bottoms, and yes, all the pixelation can only do so much. But here's what the mayor had to say.
We're going to enforce the law to the fullest with any and all agencies. I'm not satisfied that we have used every tool in our arsenal yet. And I don't like the situation in Times Square, and we're going to address it in a very aggressive manner.
Even the word tool got a laugh out of the panel. Interesting enough, it's not the nudity here that's illegal. It turns out it's perfectly legal to walk around topless in New York City. And I'm not just talking about the cowboy, the singing cowboy, but the ladies too. De Blasio, he's upset about the ladies using aggressive tactics to separate men from their money. He wants to use what he calls regulatory or legislative measures to deal with them, and that is not sitting well with civil libertarians. Prominent attorney Norman Siegel says, quote, "This is a test for de Blasio, who proclaims to be a progressive and is committed to civil liberties." Now, maybe the most amazing part of the story is that Andrew Cuomo and Bill de Blasio are on the same side, kind of, sort of. Governor says what they're doing is illegal and it infringes on legitimate businesses, and it reminds him of the bad old days of Times Square. Now, let's get our legal panel to weigh in on this. Jim Kasouris, I know, Jim Kasouris, so at least I got to introduce you to before I go home. Jimmy's a criminal defense attorney in Manhattan. He sits on the board of directors for the New York City Criminal Bar Association, frequently lecturing at New York Law School, bar associations in Queens and New York City and beyond. Mayo Bartlett, an attorney at the law offices of Mayo Bartlett PLLC, former chief of the Bias Crimes Unit at the Westchester County DA's office, and I'm already sorry he's stuck with us on this topic. Mark Furnish, a professor at Brooklyn Law, and he's argued before the U.S. Supreme Court, and he definitely is who else. Absolutely.
It's so earth-shatteringly
Well, first of all,
important.
I didn't realize, and maybe I should have, you can walk around in broad daylight topless in New York City and you're breaking no law.
God bless New York City. God bless the USA. I'm all for hauling us back into the bad old days instead of the vat of Iowan mayonnaise that currently occupies Times Square.
Okay. Now
Did
this is what they're
Did you say the problem was aggressively topless women aggressively separating from their money?
You really need the inducement to get men to ogle breasts and, God forbid, pony up some money.
Let me editorials as well here. You go to a show in New York City because there's no reason any New Yorker or anyone in the metropolitan area is going anywhere near Times Square unless you've got to cut through
Well,
because of
now I'm
parking to
going
go
near
to the
there. I work around the corner. I avoid it like the
Mark
plague.
will
Tomorrow
happily be
morning,
separated.
bright and early, I heard they start at 10 a.m. I'm out there.
He will be separated from his money gladly. There'll be no lawsuit. However, the point is, you got millions of tourists descending on this place here, and he's right, it's become Disneyfied. But it's not just these ladies. It's the profane Elmos. It's
Profane Elmos? Bring back the peep shows. Profane Elmos.
I don't know where I'm going to go with this segment
not gonna
now.
work.
You have swinging Spider-Mans that are literally punching out to other ones. Okay. So my point is, and I'll start with you, Jimmy, before I go off the rails to my far right, you can't just put a hot dog cart in the middle of Times Square. You got to get a permit for it. Even the guys that set up those tables over there when they're hawking the fake Fendis or whatever, you got to get a table for it.
Right.
Why can you all of a sudden decide to do commerce? I know panhandling's legal here, but you're setting up a shtick, and you can do it wherever you want. And can you do it however you want? Can you aggressively say, take a photo with me. Give me $5. Give me $5. Come on, show me the money. Show me the money. Is that legal?
Well, that's the difference. You're never going to survive a constitutional challenge unless you go by that route. Panhandling is legal. Aggressive panhandling is not legal. They have to find the violation of the law
in the subway?
in order to
They're
in order
in
to
your
do anything.
face. They're
That's right.
jumping around on poles. They're having mariachi bands. You can't stop them. What's more aggressive than when I'm trying to read a case, a mariachi band comes in my face, strums a guitar, and demands that I pony up the money? How are they going to survive any kind of selective enforcement challenge to this? I'm a captive audience in that subway. I have to get to work to try to earn a living. Nobody forces you to go to Times Square, especially when they're trumpeting in the newspapers and on television and on this program now what, God forbid, might be lurking there for the wayward 4-year-old that finds his way into Times Square.
They cannot block an entrance, though, even in public property, if I'm trying to get into a building here and they're basically harassing me for money, okay? And I'm not trying to go to the broken windows or anything else. I'm just trying to get to, Mayo, is there a line that we can define that's going to be crossed or not?
If they're making money, if it's commerce, then you can basically regulate that, but you can't do it in a discriminatory way. So you still have to treat them as you would that hot dog stand or any other business that's there. And the reality is, then at that point, it opens them up to charge whatever fees they want to charge. So I don't know that you necessarily want to go down that road.
But Mayo, as I understand, you can't require a panhandler to get a permit to sit on a stoop, but can these folks argue that they're performance artists, even though I think that's a very liberal use of the term here? Can they argue they're performance artists and therefore you can't regulate their speech?
Well, I think that there is an argument that you can say that they're performance artists and it's not much different than someone who's playing a guitar and people go by and put a tip in a jar. You can argue that, but it's a bigger symptom of where our economy is as a nation. The fact that you have so many people lined up out there and it does almost look like a theme park because there are no real jobs. People can't find a way to earn a living.
The ladies are saying they're making $75K.
This is the oldest trade. This is a variant on the
they
oldest
went to college
job
for this,
in the
and-
history of the world.
Exactly.
But look at this guy. Look at this guy. Nobody said
Well, why is
anything.
it-
But
Well,
he's
he
not
was out
bothering
there.
anybody,
Yeah,
apparently.
he's jiggling around there just like they are.
He's still looking for tips. The point is that it's going to be so difficult because now they're yelling and screaming because it's women without their tops on.
God
Nobody was yelling and screaming. Mayor DeBlasio, the governor, wasn't out there when you had
Would
these
they yell if it
offensive
was
Elmos or anybody else doing
Would they yell if it was a transgendered person out there? Would they do that? Why do we have to bleed every sort of color out of this city? And isn't it discriminatory and selective enforcement that we're harping on this as opposed to all
That's what
the
I'm saying.
freaks that are running
That's what
around
I'm
the city
saying.
right now
Well,
today?
you know what I think is? I just think
This
it's
is
different. I think it's-
red-blooded American entertainment right here.
Every time I think I know where I'm about to go, I'm totally taken off, and it's not just the pixelating; it's Mark. But I gotta tell you, just from having gone through this recently to try and go see a show,
This block you're going to the show, go down 8th Avenue. Why don't you go down 8th Avenue or 9th Avenue to get to the show?
Everybody gets it, and I'm not saying I'm in favor of it, and I'm not saying parents are in favor of it when they take their kids there. The point
Why
is,
would you
is
take
that-
your kid there?
I get
Why
it,
would you
but
do
the
that?
point is
oh, are
that-
you kidding me? They're right across from the M&M
That's right.
store.
Well, then don't go to the M&M store. Go to It's Sugar downtown. There's viable alternatives. Everyone knows.
Times
You don't
Square
go to
is-
Times
it's a
Square
draw,
for a
though, Mark.
classy,
It's a
edifying
draw.
experience.
If you're coming to New
Every
York, you
tourist
have to
comes
go
to
there.
Times
That's
Square.
right.
Whether I try and beg them not to or not, they go to Times Square.
Don't you think the tourists want to see this? I mean, where else are you going to get this except maybe you could go to Las Vegas if you want New York to look just like
I
Las
guess I'm asking a
Vegas.
separate question. Let's say the three of you are in-house counsel, either the mayor or the governor, and they say, tell me how I can legally stop this.
Why would
What's
you want
their
to
route?
legally stop it?
You-
This is what's a draw for
Mark,
New York. This is what
Play
separates
along.
from Las
You're
Vegas.
the legal. Are you going to tell your boss go jump? You probably would. But all right, the rest of us here, how would you?
The
if
Daily
you-
News says make it into a park. Because on a park, you can regulate it, and they don't have any right to free expression. Make it into a
kind of a theme
governmentally
park now
protected
already.
area.
That's right.
Condemn the area, but what are you going to do with all the private enterprise? You condemn the area and make it into a park. You can then regulate what the businesses are doing around there, and you might well owe them compensation under the Fifth Amendment. Just let it be.
But the bigger problem is that you can get to the point where you start doing that with anything, and you get to the point where anything that's unpopular, all of a sudden parks start popping up, and people can't engage in business. Why are people going there in the first place? So if nobody was going there and tipping them and taking pictures, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. So that's something you can't really regulate or legislate.
Request for a tip. What are they going to do? Hit you?
No,
then you lock
then they
them
get
up.
arrested. That's right.
You don't have to pony up the money. You just say, no, I didn't ask for your picture. We didn't have a prearranged fee. $1 seems reasonable for you, and take it and be on your way, or report me to the police. How many of them are going to do that?
I do think some people, I mean, we've all seen it, have been intimidated after they do something and they demand a payment that they don't realize this is a negotiation.
You mean that
right?
they're embarrassed by having lined up and ponied up for the picture in the first place?
You know what? I'm going to save
It's
the
like a
remaining
form of
time on this.
blackmail?
I'm going to save the remaining time on this segment for something else. There's no winning here, but as I do take it from the three of you, the governor and mayor might have made a popular press conference, but they're going to have a hard time really regulating it.
That's what this is. It's to
All right.
divert the attention that the heat that's on Cuomo for everything else. He can fool around with this.
Again, look for Mark Furnish, 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, rain notwithstanding, or he'll be the guy in the umbrella. All right, we want to get you involved in the conversation. Head over to Facebook and Twitter and sound off on our question. Should it be legal to be topless in public in New York City, one of the few cities where it is just that?
But I'm sorry, should it be legal for women to be topless in New York City? It has always been legal for men to walk around, and that's why
Larry, right
the
now,
law was
Larry,
changed.
the producer, is laughing right now because he tried to put women in there. I said, oh, let's just do it generic. Who's going to catch me on that? Thank you, Jimmy. Okay, coming up next, what's more American than, you would say, than this, but how about football? Well, Tom Brady's attorneys in the NFL, they were back in federal court today trying to reach a deal on Deflategate. And what the judge had to say was very telling. We're going to tell you who he's coming down on and what that could mean here for the NFL.